Okay, we'll start with this. We now know a little bit more about who's set to make an appearance on the upcoming October 9th Liam Smith versus Anthony Fowler
junior middleweight contest.
We already knew that Shannon Courtenay's next in-the-ring appearance was going to be on the undercard of that fight against the unbeaten Jamie Mitchell from right here in the United States, but it appears that Natasha Jonas and Rhiannon Dixon, they are set to make their next in-the-ring appearances on that undercard as well. And this is quite the revelation, as there has been widespread speculation as to what the next move for Natasha Jonas is. A lot of people felt, myself included, that she was going to migrate over there to Sky, along with her former stablemate, Savannah Marshall, April Hunter, Josh Kelly.
That's what the rumor was a few weeks ago.
We talked about it here on the channel weeks before Sky made their big announcement that they had assembled a stable, and, you know, some of that stable included former Matchroom alums. Natasha Jonas is not among them. Her next fight is going to be on a Matchroom card.
At what weight, we don't know.
How to interpret this move from Ms. Great Britain? Well, Natasha Jonas is further along than some of the Sky Sports stable of Sirens. She's been involved in title fights, at least 2 of them.
She's not on the bring-along process the way that they are.
No. At this point, Natasha Jonas is a name, and she should be fighting in title fights. That's what
makes sense for her right now.
Some of those guys that they've got signed to Sky Sports, Boxer, they're in the very beginning stages of their careers. Thus, the people at Sky and Boxer, they have time to develop them, time to groom them. But for Natasha, she needs to be involved in title fights, and she is closer to those world titles at 130, 135, and 140 with Matchroom.
She can get those fights.
I don't know at what weight her next fight is going to be, though I have expressed some enthusiasm myself at seeing Natasha Jonas climb up there to 140 pounds. Given her physical dimensions, I think she can do it. I think it's an easier weight for her to make, and I think that her power will carry. This fall, there's supposed to be a big tournament going down there between Chantel Cameron, Mary McGee, Kaylee Reese, and Jessica Kamara. Natasha Jonas plays the cards right. She could see herself challenging the winner of that tournament
for undisputed
next year, and they've just got to keep Tasha busy in the mean in between time. People like Tasha.
Her demeanor,
her resolve, resilience, and ring craft. She's got a fan-friendly style, and she knows how to work a crowd. So it was wise, very wise of the people over there at Matchroom to keep her on board.
And it was wise of Tasha to stay on board.
Think about Rhiannon Dixon, who was in action just a little over a week ago, advancing to a professional record of 3 wins, no losses, and no draws. We've actually talked about her here on the channel. She is one of Ring IQ's 2021 top prospects to watch. Southpaw.
Fighting out of Wigan, Lancashire.
She's in good company with experienced veterans like Anthony Crowler, Natasha Jonas, Callum Johnson.
Working with Smoking Joe Gallagher.
Not but 2 days ago, I was just saying that. You know, Sky Sports, they might want to get into the Rhiannon Dixon business. It seems that Matchroom has beat them to the punch. With young Rhiannon Dixon, only 26 years old, only 3-0 as a professional, Matchroom keeps their foot in the door of the lightweight division. Katie Taylor, who rules that division, has its undisputed champion. She's obviously further along than Rhiannon is, but in investing in Rhiannon,
you're invested in that division's future.
Matchroom lost Savannah Marshall to Sky. They lost April Hunter, too.
They've got Rhiannon Dixon.
And it's a great signing. It really is. There really aren't that many more opportunities for a fighter like Rhiannon, early stages of their career, at or around those weights. You know, the 130-pounders, the 135-pounders. There's a lot of names there you can mix and match down the line. So, smooth move by Matchroom. I look forward to seeing both Rhiannon and Natasha
on October 9th.
In other news, Clarissa Shields came across an image of Jessica McCaskill and left a caption that reads, "It looks like somebody's coming to 154 or 160 with those love handles." To which Mark Taffet, who helps handle the career of Clarissa Shields, added, "Maybe after we fight Savannah Marshall, we do a battle of the Undisputeds at 153 pounds. Clarissa Shields versus J.D. Mack," to which Rick Ramos seems very receptive to. And I've spoken to Rick here on the channel. That's a fight they've always been open to. They have been open to taking on Clarissa Shields up there at around 147, maybe even 150-something pounds.
Clarissa's got a lot of size on Jessica.
In my previous video, we talked about Clarissa's call-out of Katie Taylor and how that's a call-out that just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Katie is way too small for Clarissa.
You know, I love Jessica McCaskill. I think she's proven to be an excellent fighter. She's lived up to my expectations. I knew years ago that even though she wanted that Katie Taylor fight, she got the fight, she lost the fight, that wasn't the end. Big things lied in wait for Jessica McCaskill. Some of those big things, they have come into fruition. She has seen herself become a unified champion at 140 pounds and an undisputed champion at 147 pounds. Say what you will about Jessica's form, you can't detract from her body of work, her resume.
You think she's cut out the fight with Shields, though?
Jessica's bread and butter has been overwhelming her opponents with volume and pressure, and it's worked for her up until this point. But if she finds herself opposite the ring of Clarissa Shields, I don't think it's going to work out. Clarissa's a lot bigger than Jessica McCaskill, so out-muscling her...
That really ain't the way to go.
Jessica's got one gear. When that opening bell sounds, she's going to come straight at you, come after you. But against Clarissa, there's just far too much size there to have to contend with. Never mind skill. Anecdotes aside, the fight is a possibility, it really is. And this is the beauty of Sky Sports staying in the sport of boxing. Clarissa's with them. She's supposed to be fighting on that platform under the Boxer banner. You have two major platforms in the United Kingdom invested in the sport of women's boxing.
Jessica McCaskill is a name.
We don't know here and now who Jessica's next opponent is going to be. We know that Alma Ibarra is hot on her trail, but
Things are a little immaterial right now.
Shields versus McCaskill is a possibility that is made possible by Sky Sports and Boxer, their investment in Clarissa, though I'm not sure it's a possibility for the immediate future. I don't know, we'll see. Meanwhile, Michael Woods tweeted, word is, yes, Jim Lampley will be ringside at the Hulu Theater October 4th to call Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos bout on the Triller fight promotion.
Might have spoke too soon about old Jim.
Jim was supposed to call that Evander Holyfield versus Victor Belfort fight, but he decided to pull out. We talked about that here on the channel, and who knows what the real reason was. Was it because he knows that a 58-year-old Evander Holyfield don't belong nowhere near a ring, and that kind of a card is beneath him, beneath Jim? Was it that? Was it that Triller, quite last minute, decided to allow Donald Trump, his son, to commentate on the fight? Was it political?
Is that why Jim Lampley pulled out?
One card to the other, you have to cross-reference both and ask yourself, what does this card have that the other card didn't have? What's the difference? What might have made Jim decide to pull out of one card to participate in the other? We thought that pullout heralded the end of Jim Lampley's partnership with Triller. Seemed like a relationship that ended before it even started. Apparently that's not the case. Apparently he is going to be calling the...
He's going to commentate for Lopez versus Kambosos.
Jim Lampley is a fixture in the sport of boxing, a distinguished gentleman and a professional. And maybe for Jim it was as simple as he's there to commentate on boxing matches, boxing, not freak fights, not novelty acts.
What the hell would be the point?
Chael Sonnen suspects that Tito Ortiz, who fought on the undercard of Victor Belfort versus Evander Holyfield, he suspects that Tito Ortiz took a dive
Against Anderson Silva.
You have to remember, the Florida Commission did not sanction any of those bouts as actual professional boxing matches. They were all exhibitions. And one is left to wonder, well, if these were exhibitions, two of them ended in knockouts.
Isn't that against the rules?
We haven't heard any bluster from the Florida Commission.
No uproar.
No, nothing. One would think that if two guys decide to swap punches in the state of Florida, the Florida Commission,
Guys are getting knocked out.
the state of Florida is going to have something to say about it. Otherwise, what separates it from a backyard brawl, from a street fight?
Very peculiar.
Even more peculiar is that Jim Lampley hasn't severed ties to Triller. He is going to be calling Lopez versus Kambosos Jr.
I wonder how long he's going to stick around.
And how many genuine boxing matches can Triller put on when they've only got one fighter under contract that I know of, and that's Michael Hunter? I don't think that Jim Lampley, someone as distinguished as Jim Lampley, I don't think he's in the business of commentating, calling circus fights. In light heavyweight news involving that Beterbiev versus Browne situation, the WBC grants extension, purse bid delayed until September 28th. Talks remain ongoing for the ordered WBC light heavyweight title fight between defending champion Artur Beterbiev, also the lineal and IBF champion, and mandatory challenger Marcus Browne. WBC representatives confirmed Wednesday, BoxingScene.com, that the fight was destined for a purse bid hearing scheduled to take place this Friday from the sanctioning body's headquarters in Mexico City, but has been postponed to September 28th. This Friday means this past Friday.
Last week.
WBC President Mauricio Suleiman informed Boxing Scene that both parties requested the extension in hopes of reaching a deal. Beterbiev 16-0 with 16 KOs is promoted by Top Rank, while Browne 24-1 with 16 KOs fights under the Premier Boxing Champions banner and is represented in negotiations by TGB Promotions, i.e. Tom Browne. Fight was initially ordered on August 19th, with the two sides given the standard 30-day negotiation period to work out terms for a deal. Top Rank and TGB were huddled in talks for another ordered fight during that time, a welterweight clash between WBO titleist Terence Crawford and former two-time welterweight titleist Sean Portier as his mandatory challenge. Two sides reached terms Tuesday, hours ahead of a rescheduled purse bid following an allotted 12-day delay. What do I think this means? Well, over there on PBC's Isolation Island, they don't have any titles for Marcus Browne to fight for. That's why he's targeting a top-ranked guy, because that top-ranked guy has two of the alphabet titles in this division. And it's hard to imagine, it's hard to conjure that the people at the PBC are going to, pay through the nose to bring Artur to their side of things? To their side of the street?
I don't know.
On one hand, I tell myself that the PBC didn't want to be involved in the negotiations for Crawford versus Porter and Terence Crawford. He's a bigger name than Artur Beterbiev, but they didn't think it at all necessary to help negotiate that fight and co-promote it. They stayed out of it. This is a much less expensive fight than that fight. That fight between Terence and Sean, that's a $10 million fight.
Beterbiev versus Browne ain't no $10 million fight.
It's not. Is it possible that the PBC and Top Rank have worked out a bartering system that will allow their fighters to clash? I mean, is that outside the realm of possibility that the PBC, they decided to, let Top Rank do the Porter fight, and maybe what they want to do is they want to do the Beterbiev fight because they ain't got no world titles for their guys on that side of the street to fight for. Remember, the article states that both sides requested an extension. That's TGB and Top Rank.
Beterbiev versus Browne ain't nowhere near as expensive as Crawford versus Porter.
PBC is already $50 million in the hole, guaranteed purses, to Canelo Alvarez and Caleb Plant. There are also several $1 million down the hole with the upcoming Wilder vs. Fury trilogy. They just ain't got it in the budget to stage a $10 million fight between Terence Crawford and Sean Porter. What if that's the situation? What if that's the case and they have instead opted to host a much less expensive fight in Browne versus Beterbiev, which would only cost them a few $1 million. No, it's near as much as they pay for Crawford versus Porter.
That's one way it could break down.
Another way it could break down is maybe the PBC don't pay for nothing in this situation either. Maybe they decide they're going to let Marcus Browne cross that street because they ain't got no titles for him to fight for.
So let Top Rank foot the bill.
Let Top Rank pay for the goddamn fight because they ain't got that many ponies at light heavyweight anyway. No champions. Probably don't even like Marcus Browne's chances against Artur Beterbiev. So we're going to pay for this fight just to get this guy starched?
No gracias.
That's one of two ways it could break down. And, I'm not against the fight. I'll watch it regardless of who puts it on. Finally, former WBC super middleweight champion David Benavidez says, I feel like I can stop Jermall Charlo.
That makes two of us.
He's quoted as saying, I thought, honestly, that Charlo was going to knock him out early in the fight, Benavidez said on the SI Boxing podcast. Just seeing him make it to the 12th round was really surprising, but honestly, I wouldn't doubt if he overlooked him and didn't train as hard. Montiel, he's a warrior too. He had 2 losses, but his wins were all knockouts. Although Charlo campaigns at middleweight, Benavidez has expressed interest in facing the Houstonian, going so far as to say recently that he would drop down to 160 pounds. Both fighters are backed by Premier Boxing champions, so it's not inconceivable that they could swap punches down the line. Should that fight materialize, Benavidez sees plenty of holes in Charlo's defense that he can exploit. He was quoted as saying Montiel was really landing on Charlo, Benavidez said. The type of stuff that he likes to do, the punches that he throws, are what I like to throw too. It's just that David, he's a bigger guy than Juan Montiel and a bigger puncher, and he's never been stopped, never lost a fight.
I think Charlo's gonna fight this guy.
Charlo, I think, is not as good a fighter as he thinks he is. He's still a great fighter, and it would be a great fight, but I feel like I can stop Charlo, and I reiterate, that makes 2 of us. After having seen what Jamal,
Give
me a break.
You're saying.
Jamal Charlo's been campaigning as a middleweight for approximately 4 years and 7 fights.
He's 31 years old.
It feels like he's about as developed as he's going to be. It doesn't feel like he's getting better. It feels a lot like he's regressing. He's getting worse. He dominated Sergey Derevianchenko, but context is key. Derevianchenko was coming off of a year of inactivity in a physically taxing fight with Gennady Golovkin. We talked about that. That kind of an environment, those kinds of circumstances, make it possible for Jamal to dominate such a fighter. Guys like Brandon Adams, guys like Juan Montiel, unheralded guys that haven't fought the likes of a Gennady Golovkin. You expect that Jamal should be able to dispatch these kinds of opponents, and he didn't. So you can't stop a Brandon Adams and a Juan Montiel at 160. What are you going to do with a David Benavidez at 168? Not saying that the fight will happen at 168, since now David is saying he's willing to come down. He's willing to fight Jermall Charlo at middleweight. I have no idea whether or not he can make that weight healthy, but that's what he's saying. Look,
What?
David Benavidez might very well be one of the most dangerous guys, if not the most dangerous guy, at super middleweight. The most dangerous guy for a Canelo Alvarez to fight. But so long as he stays on that island, we may never find out. We may never really know how good David Benavidez is, because it's not a guarantee that Canelo Alvarez fights him after the Caleb Plant fight. And if he doesn't fight him, if he decides to go the other way, do something else, after having become that division's undisputed champion, where does that leave David Benavidez? There's no belts on that side of the street for him to fight for, or upstairs at 175. He's stuck in the same rut as Marcus Browne.
What if Canelo don't fight him after Plant?
What if he leaves, or worse? What if he stays, but he fights Jermall Charlo, doesn't fight David Benavidez? Well, that would take Jermall Charlo off the table for David.
What if Canelo leaves afterwards?
A timeline like that, you're talking about approximately a year's time, what could be 12 months or close to it. And what's David going to be doing in the in-between time? Fighting more guys like Ronald Ellis and Jose Uzcategui? Will he still even be able to make super middleweight in a year's time? Because he's a big guy, really big guy for that weight. Biggest guy, one of the biggest guys in that entire division. A year from now, can he still make 168 pounds?
Did lose his title on the scales.
At some point, David Benavidez is going to have to make a decision. Because if Canelo Alvarez wins all those belts and then leaves with them, he's screwed. There's no guarantee that Jermall will fight him.
No guarantees of anything, really.
He might need to change his decorum.